first up, why do you care? Why do you want to listen to me? Then we'll talk a bit about Jest, so long as you guys don't already know it. I'm going to ask you in a second. And then I'll talk about mocks and make sure you know about that too. And then we'll move on to what are the actual lessons learned. So if you guys already know everything, we'll get onto the live demo really quickly and you'll all see me have a go myself. So first up, who am I? Why should you care? My name's Millie. Millisande is how you pronounce my name, but call me Millie, it's fine. I should have told Yana this. Whoops. And I've been a senior developer now, running teams at IBM Consulting in the digital agency section called IX. And I've been experiencing some issues you might have experienced yourself. So one of those is often on projects I'm spending a lot of time doing UAT testing. So first off, if you're not using Jest already, if you're not doing unit tests with Jest already, it's all part of that shift left so that you're doing less of the work in the UAT space that's more time consuming. You're automating more. Also, I'm very lucky in that I largely work on greenfield projects. So my longest ever project has been 2 years long. So, good for me, but it's probably not the case for most of you. So, going back and looking at 2-year-old code, it's often hard to know what it's doing. So if you write good tests, if you follow the guidelines I'm going to go through, you're going to get a better, easy to read list of all of the use cases. So make it easier to understand what you're working on. One of my projects I've worked on was for a UI component library that was used by hundreds of teams, and there was an inner source model, so they could all contribute. And obviously, if one person puts something in that breaks it for 20 other people, the person that gets the slack, me. So don't want that to happen. That project actually insisted we had 100% coverage on all our UI components, which was tough. So some of the lessons learned got me up to 100% coverage. You don't probably want to do that, but you can if you do want to. And if you're writing tests, they're probably failing some of the time. I spent a lot of time fixing failing tests, and hopefully the things I'm going to teach you today will help to resolve them much faster. Cool, so first up, I want to make sure that I'm tailoring this to what you know. I don't want to leave anyone behind. So if you could get out your phones, go onto slido.com, put in this number, and we'll find out how much everybody knows in the room so far. So this is why it's important that I'm mirroring, because I can switch over to this lovely view. I was thinking maybe I would introduce a drum roll at this point, Oh, we've got lots of experience in the room. Amazing. I use Jest now and again. Use it now. We do have some people that don't know what Jest is. Yes, no live demo. Yes, more people that don't know what Jest is. Amazing. Oh, okay. I've learned what I need to know. I'm doing the whole talk. I'm sorry, everyone. Cool. Here we go. On to what is Jest. So Jest is a unit test library. So this is the most basic, smallest part of your code that you will test. You will write a unit test for it. And Jest is considered largely the industry standard. So in the 2022 State of JS survey, which surveys 39,000 people and more than 39,000 people, 68.3% of people are using Jest. So Jest is the most common JavaScript testing library. And built on top of that are other libraries that are designed to be used for testing React. So we have the React Facebook team have actually produced their own React test renderer to fake what the DOM's doing when it renders something. And then also there is this testing library that's commonly used. So 34.7% of respondents are using the Jest testing library. And there's also a React native version of it as well. So if you are interested in using Jest, I highly recommend looking into it, and you are probably likely to be using these libraries. So this is an example of a Jest test. As you can see from just reading it through, it is written in a really human-readable way. The test can be broken up into describe blocks, and you can specify whatever you want in that describe block. You can specify whatever you want in your it statement. And so for each test, you would have an it statement, and in that there would be an expect statement that will be true or false. And that's how you know whether your test passes or not. It should all be true. And Jest comes with lots of really useful utilities. So one of those is the before all, the after each. So there's also, you won't believe this, an after all and a before each. So you can use these to kind of reuse the same utilities multiple times, and you don't have to rewrite it. Jest is full of lots of features, and it's full of lots of different expect statements. And I'm not going to list them all because there is only 20 minutes in this talk, and I love testing, and I want to talk to you about it. So I've put some of the ones I commonly use. So the first block, that's what I use when I'm writing backend tests. Vanilla.js tests, they come with Jest out of the box. And then the lower level, that's what I'm using when I'm doing my front-end testing. And if you want to know my opinion about to match snapshot, I'd love to get into it in the Q&A section, but I don't have time right now. So, what are mocks? I like this image because it's evocative of what mocks are. We've got this beautiful Shibu, and next to it is something that's a little bit like it. It has some of the features, but it's not quite as good. Oh, yeah, sorry, you're right. No, it is as good. Soft toys don't have feelings. I can say what I want. So here is a very super simple example of your UI. So you've got a UI component. Maybe it's using some React context to share what the user's ID is, and then it's going to a backend to go and retrieve data about that user. Let's say you're running a test and your internet goes down. Suddenly, your UI component test fails because it can't connect to the backend server. Or let's say someone changes something on the backend server. Now your test fails and you don't know why. Likewise, if you change something on the React context, now your UI component test might be failing. And if you've got lots of things using that React context, lots of your tests are failing. So where are you going to go to try and troubleshoot that? I mean, if you're clever, you'll know that they're all using the React context. We can save yourself seconds by not actually running the test with the real React context or the real backend server. So this is why mocks are super helpful, because it makes all of our tests more modular. There are lots of different ways you can mock things. So here are some of the common approaches, and most of them are, well, all of them are built in Jest automatically. So we have the factory function in the top left, and I will explain why this is my favorite in a second. We also have the spy function in the top right. These are my two favorites. Spies are really good because you can specify a mock for a specific function from a module, whereas the factory function replaces the entire module. So a bit like that soft toy is replacing your dog. I hope it doesn't, but yeah, you get the analogy. Jest also has manual mocks. I don't like these as much. This is a personal hang-up. I find them a bit black boxy. Jest will automatically pick up anything that's in the module to mocks, the mocks folder, and you have to name all of your files exactly the same way in exactly the same format, and it'll be done automatically. I don't personally like it because I find it a little bit less intuitive to be able to read the test and know everything it's doing, but it's good for when you're reusing the same mock in multiple things. And then the worst one, I hate this one, import mock and assign. I keep finding the mic every now and again. Ugh. So I hate this one because I work with TypeScript a lot, and TypeScript hates this one too. It doesn't like when you try and reassign something as something else. Besides which, you're importing the service and then you're not making it clear that the thing that you're working on is a mock. So that's why I hate it. But what do I love? I love the factory function. Look at it, isn't it beautiful? I need to stop turning this way. Let me turn this way. So the factory function, I like it because it's the most flexible. You can do dynamic mocks, so you can reassign the mock as you're going, which is what I'm doing here. Just remember to always call the thing you're reassigning a mock function, because if it doesn't start with mock, the factory function doesn't like it. You can also do static mocks, so you never have to change it. You can also mock objects, and this is the only one that lets you mock an object. So they all get hoisted when you start the program. So you've got to remember that when it runs, and it runs the function inside your mock, nothing else is defined. But as long as you remember that, you're going to be very happy with these. I'm telling you, factory functions are the way to go. Oh yeah, and TypeScript doesn't care what goes on in these. Great. Okay, so what you really want to know is what's the lessons learned? I hope I got all the people who needed to know what Jest was up to speed. So for the people in the room who use Jest a lot, hopefully you know most of these. So first off, when you're writing good tests, you actually have to start with the code that you're writing. I'm not talking about TDD. You can ask me how much I actually do TDD, and I will answer it in the Q&A, and I will be embarrassed. But you need to be writing code so that it is modular, because if you have a modular code that you are testing, your tests become a lot smaller, they're much easier to maintain, and they also are more readable, and your mocks are so much easier because you're only going to be mocking the one thing that that function is doing instead of mocking 20 things that that function is doing. So another really useful tip is to use describe blocks to separate out your code. You saw the example earlier, makes it more readable. Write your tests so that they're independent. They shouldn't be reliant on the state of the previous test. Means you can use that .only syntax that I flashed up on the screen a little while ago, so that you run one test at a time. Makes it much easier to troubleshoot if one test is failing. And you should use the before eaches and the after eaches. Let's reduce code. Let's make sure that it's quick to refactor. All right, actual tactics. And I made a mnemonic, not an acronym, the other one. And I tried to do it for the other one. It was too hard. So everyone should remember should. And this is really simple because every time you write a test, you normally start it with it should. So you'll remember this one. So what does should stand for? So this is about, you've reached the end of sprint, you've been working on one dev ticket, and the very, very last thing is writing the tests. And you're like panicking because there's only one test and it keeps failing and you can't make it work. This is when you should think about should. And it stands for switch it up. There's lots of different ways to skin a cat with Jest. So there's lots of different mocking methods, and there's also different ways you can get kind of code coverage. So think about, maybe I need to actually mock React itself to achieve what I'm trying to achieve. Maybe all I need to test is the child component from my styled components, because then I can just put in whatever I need in as props. I don't have to rely on the whole thing. Change your approach, keep trying. That's what's important. H stands for hoisting. Make sure you understand how hoisting is affecting your tests, because otherwise you're going to waste a lot of time. .only, when you're troubleshooting, try to reduce the noise. Use .only liberally to just make sure that any console logs that you add are just for that one test. Update options. Don't forget that Jest comes with lots of options. You can change the global time. You can change the amount of the timeout time for Jest. You can change the timeout time for any wait fors that you're waiting for React to render in. So don't forget that that tool's there. Log it out. Add console logs. If you know how to use breakpoints, do that. I still haven't worked it out myself. So I'd use a lot of console logs. And finally, don't give up. I would like to add an asterisk to this one. Sometimes it's just not worth it. Doing 100% coverage is a pain. And sometimes that's just not worth your time. So you should give up when it's right for you. But remember that everyone has been here. Have confidence that you will get through this if you try and switch it up as many times as you can. Stack Overflow, as always, is your friend, but I didn't think it needed to be said. Okay, well, apparently I'm doing really good for time. So everyone who said you talk really fast when you're doing a talk was correct. So apologies, everyone. Right, so the idea now is I'm going to actually put the pudding in my mouth and eat it, as they say nowhere. I have made this portfolio app. It's just a Create React app. Don't worry too much about it. But it's just to give an example of an application where I'm adding tests. So I'm going to be adding tests to the header element. You can't actually see it. Actually, can I inspect it? Here we go. Yeah, here we go. There's the header. It has two buttons. One button picks up and changes the theme that's shared by the context. Ooh. Ooh. Thank you. And I have a button for my CV, which I don't want to add. But so all I want to do is it just goes to be added later when I console log. In fact, do I need to make this bigger? To be added later. Woohoo! Here we go. Lots of to be added laters. So I'm writing a piece of, actually, yeah, it is on the screen. Amazing. So I have written Jest tests to try and achieve 100% coverage on my portfolio app. So I can run Jest easy as that. And at the moment, I am missing some code for line 60 of my header element. Cool. So the header element on line 60 is doing the console log. Here it is, to be added later. So I was going to do this as a mob programming example, but there's lots of you, and I couldn't work out how to do it. So I'm just going to, for the purposes of time, talk you through how I'm going to resolve this. So, apologies, I will continue to talk. Here is my test where I'm going to be triggering the onClick. So let's do fire event. And we know that with this I want to expect that console.log has been triggered. Cool. Let's see what happens when I run this. Oh, it's failed. It's actually killed my entire test suite. And I'm also getting a console log, which I don't really like either because it's not relevant to my test whether it actually does the physical action of console logging. So the complaint is that it must be a mock or a spy. So I know I have to mock console.log. Now, console.log is pretty special. I don't know where it's coming from. I know it's coming from globals, but I'm not actually declaring it as an imported module. So if I was to try and do a factory function with this, I don't even think it's possible because I can't actually say I'm mocking this module. So the only way to do this one is with the spy method. So I'm going to do jest.spy on, and I'm going to do it based on everything that's in global. And then I can specify console, and then I can specify that the function to be mocked is log. And because I don't actually like seeing the logs, this is a massive bugbear for me on my current project because everyone leaves their console errors in, and I don't know if the test is actually working or not. So mock implementation, I'm just going to specify for it to do something else. I could actually replace this and be a good Jest coder by replacing this with the default Jest fake function. Right, let's play that again. Ta-da! Beautiful. Clean code, 100%. Thank you. Right, I have had my 5-minute warning, but I wanted to show you the context mock. So I need to rename these so that they get not included and go back to having some coverage issues. Rename this. Cool, now this is the test. This one is expecting to mock the React context. So we have that toggle button. I'll show you it in the code. We're importing toggle theme, and then we are triggering toggle theme when I use my toggle component. So what I need to do is to, God, how did I do this? Okay, I have worked out how to get the switch statement with this fire event. Good past me. But the thing that I haven't mocked is the toggle method. So yeah, I've got my spy already. So this time I am going to use a factory function. So I'm going to do just.mock, work out where my use theme is coming from. This needs to come from the header. Use settings context here. Cool. Now, I need to then specify what this module is going to expose. So I've actually written my context in a clever way to make this super easy. And I will briefly, if I have time, show you how I'm doing it if I don't. So actually, I'm exposing the settings context with already wrapped with use context. So this is it here. Use settings is already wrapped with use context. And that means all I have to do is to write use settings here, say that it's callable, and then toggle theme will be exposed from it. And I think I can write const mock toggle theme equals jest.fn. And here I can just do mock toggle theme. Notice that A, I haven't turned this into an object, and B, because this is a function, it's not going to be called until the render method happens. So even though the factory function's hoisted, which would mean that this didn't exist at the time that it's run, by the time that use settings is triggered, this mock toggle theme should exist. So I can now do fire event, nope, expect toggle theme, mock toggle theme to have been called. Here we go. Let's try running that again. Oh, failed. What did I do wrong? Oh. Settings context dot use context. Settings context is not a function. Boo! Why not? They're all failing now. God, I didn't factor this into my timing. Right. What am I doing wrong? So it's saying that settings context dot use context is not a function. Oh, it's just because I called it the wrong thing. Use settings context. It was all planned. It was all planned. And I know that I have to go off, so I will just leave you with just an image of how you would have to write the test if you weren't wrapping it in use context. So you see here, I'm actually having to mock React, then import what React actually is, and then specify what use context is. And I have to make sure that my settings context has a display name, because otherwise my theme provider won't work, because theme provider from style components is using use context under the hood. So that would stop working. So wrap all your use contexts before you export them. That's my takeaway, as well as should. Thank you.